Welcome to this Roll for Crit review. Today we're taking a look at AEG's Tiny Towns. In this game, you will be the mayor of a newly found town, and you'll be working on trying to build up your town from the resources you're able to gather around the field. Unfortunately, as you build, your area is going to shrink where you have available building space or resource storage space, so you'll have to decide carefully how you're going to place your resources and build up your town.
The way that it will work, there are a few different modes you can play. Kind of the basic standard mode is called Master Builder, and that means that each turn one player is going to get this little hammer, and they'll be the Master Builder, and they will name a resource. So there are a bunch of different kinds. You've got stone, glass, wood, brick, and wheat, and they can decide whatever one that they like. And then every other player is also going to receive a resource of the same type. So they decide what everyone gets for the round. And everybody places that resource somewhere on their board. Now this board is pretty much full, but at the start of the game it would be completely empty. And you would put it wherever you want. And then the next player would take it, they would name a different resource or maybe the same resource, and the same thing would continue. And what you're trying to do is put the right resources in the right patterns to create these buildings. Every game there are going to be a different set of buildings laid out, with some exceptions, whereas the cottage right there is always out. And you're going to be trying to matching these patterns. And if you do, then at the end of your turn, let's say I had this a stone and a glass and a wheat, I could say that matches those, I'm going to build this inn, and you can place the building that you've made in any one of the three spots that you had those resources in, or however many the resources were taking up.
Yeah, you do not actually take the card, you will actually choose 6 of these. The cottage is always available. 6 of these cards, each one from a different group, so you always have the meeples for them. Each one has their own different effects depending on whether they want to be built next to certain things, whether they cannot be built next to certain things, or whether they give you resources or help you hold on to resources. They all each have their own unique effect.
And you can build them, it doesn't have to be oriented this exact way. This could be vertical, or this could be facing a different way, what have you. So you have a little bit of flexibility in that.
But there are 2 other modes that use this deck of cards. The first one is Town Hall mode, which instead of people naming one, you just shuffle this deck, take some off so you don't know the exact cards in there, because there's an equal number of each resource, and you'll be flipping them over. Every 2 cards, people get a free pick, so if you really weren't working for glass, that third one you can get whatever you want, and you keep repeating the process till everyone is done. The other one is solo play, which you'll use the same deck of cards, but you'll have 3 cards available in a center slot, and you will choose one of the resources to pick. And then when you take it, you put it on the bottom of the deck and replace it with a new one. So you pretty much always have a general variety pool. Unless you really didn't like one, then maybe all the glass comes out.
Right. You also, every player has a secret monument card, which is their own unique building that only they can build, and they can just build one time, and they use this pretty little pink monument marker, and they have strong effects. Maybe they're worth more points, or they give you unique powers that other players don't have. So essentially with playing with multiple players, what ends up happening is everyone pretty much is going to be getting the same resources, with the exception of if you're playing Town Hall mode, your free pick. But everyone's doing different things with them. You know, you're building different buildings at different times, and all the play is simultaneous. So, the base box goes up to 6 players, but as you may see later in the week, we have a play-along video coming out. If there are enough copies of the game, you could potentially play with 1 million players.
That's why AG is actually getting a bunch of people, us included, to put out a video so you can play along. So if you do ever get this game, you can see if you can beat our scores. It's not going to be a hard challenge in this case.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. This is one of those games that, you have a lot of choices that you have to make, and not a limited amount of space to put things. So there's a lot of crucial decisions, even early on, where you really have to decide which buildings am I going to go for, and where do I put them to not close myself off. It can be tough, and it can feel, I compare it a little bit to sort of like Agricola feels, where there's usually something out of your reach. So like you'll wanna be able to, if only you could get one more turn with that one more resource, or if only you had put this here instead of here.
I do think that for the most part in this game that stress is good. I think sometimes when a game goes too over, with the exception of one monument. But outside of that, I do think it's really fun because this is like a hardcore puzzle of you trying to just like, how can I possibly not only play efficiently well and not screw my future self, 4 turns down the road.
I think we both preferred the Town Hall mode a little bit to the Master Builder mode.
That's probably because the Master Builder mode is definitely a more competitive mode. And I'm a turtler, so I like playing, just let me play my own little game, we'll see how we do.
And for the most part, I mean, even in that mode, you are pretty much, there's no power where you can like knock someone's building off their board or something. The way you would mess them up is you call resources they don't need, or you don't call resources they do need. And I think that also can be tricky. It really depends on what kind of mindset your players are in and how many players you have. Because we tried that mode with only 3. I think if you had more, it can be even harder to keep track.
I will say, I do also like the other mode because we did it the last time we did it was actually with 7 people. The game technically comes with components with 6. I pretty much just drew myself a little board and found something else to replace my own monument, which it worked. You can't really go above that because I don't think there's enough monuments for the selection because you're supposed to give 2 each so you can have a choice. But it's still, being able to fit a higher player count is very nice.
Yeah, and the solo mode works pretty well as well.
I love the solo mode.
Because it's so simple and because you're mostly focusing on your own area, you don't really have to adjust that much.
Well, the other thing I really liked is not only do you have a selection of 3, if you don't like the randomness that comes out with either someone saying or pulling out, what actually happens is you can sort of start thinking, like there came a moment when, I'm just going to flip through, like I had all of one type. I think it was actually stone, but glass. I'm thinking, I pilled a glass and did this. I'm like, I should try to use the wheat even if I could use the glass because I don't want another block of glass again. So you can actually sort of think what's going to cycle through the deck.
Yeah, it's definitely a different kind of mindset than the standard game, yeah. And I also like the solo game because honestly, like when I played it, I didn't even take these tokens out of the bags, because it's very easy to take out and clean up again. You just take what you need when you need it. You just have one little board, so it's a nice option. Whereas some solo games are really great, but they take up your whole table and you have decks of cards. This is simple. It's pared down. It's Tiny Towns, people. Here are our regular-sized crits and misses for Tiny Towns. Crits. The game provides a satisfying and stimulating puzzle as to where to place your buildings, and it's fun and interesting to see how all the players made their choices on their own individual boards using the same sets of resources. There's a good variety of different building types, and when playing with those, or even when playing with the same ones, your strategies and choices can really vary from game to game.
It's cool to see what combos may appear from the different buildings you randomly select from, and also how the monument you choose change the game.
There are multiple different modes, so you can suit the gameplay to your preferences, including the ability to play with just one player or a potentially very large amount of players.
Anything with a large variable player count is a great addition to your board game collection.
The little wooden house meeples are adorable and brightly colored and make for a nice presentation looking at the game and enjoying your town when it's all over.
It's a clever idea to have multiple cards represented by one meeple, so you still got a fun variety of meeples while an even larger variety of buildings with different effects. Misses. The game has a lot of randomness or things out of your control, whether it's deciding which monuments you get in the beginning and maybe they aren't great for you, or if it's either the deck not giving the one resource you need, or if the people around the table not saying the resource you need. It can be a bit frustrating.
Often your master plan or strategy going into the game can be completely disrupted because things just aren't going your way with the resources that you were hoping you would get.
It is possible to limit your choices really quickly if you build poorly, so make sure with new players that they understand this fact before you go in so they don't end up leaving the game early, which can be really frustrating.
It's not that long a game, but in any game where there's a possible scenario that you have to sit and wait for other players to finish, it's not ideal.
This game has a lot to offer in the box, with multiple play modes, allowing for whether you do a small player count or much larger, even streaming on video. And really, my biggest gripe with it is, I think, honestly, it's that one card. There's a fork card. in there that makes it so you no longer make choices, and I really suggest you actually put that card aside. Even if you don't play the Master Builder mode, it has a lot of weird rules too, and unless you're got a lot of games under your belt, I wouldn't suggest letting that be a possible choice people can pick, because people might build and then realize, oh, it's like removing it's removing any agency you have in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that card was as egregious as you do. I agree it's definitely a tricky one, and maybe one a more experienced player would want. And, that's at least at the beginning you get a choice of 2 monuments, so you can see that and say, I don't think I will do this well. But it can, I think in general, like we were talking about with the synergy, sometimes the buildings just don't come out for you the right way. And that is a nice thing that you do have that option of dealing out the buildings that you like and something fun. Even though you're competing with scores, I think this is one of those games where, for me, I'm more interested in just seeing if I can beat my previous score.
No, that's why I think the solo mode was so much fun, because that's very easy for.
And even playing with other players, I mean.
The other players too, but to me, like, the solo mode
does change.
Really capture that so well, because I love thinking like, okay, I'll take this because I'll hold that for later, and like it just feels.
You love thinking, yeah. It can be really fun, and
I don't feel guilty by how slow I'm taking it.
You can take your time with the analysis paralysis, which may also enter into the picture with this game.
And because I think a lot of these things, this makes a great addition, because it's something I could pull off if I just want to play like a solo game, or because how many times for us in the last few game nights have we had problems because of our player counts?
All of them. It's always a problem. So if you are interested in Tiny Towns, it's out there right now. That's our opinion on it. And if you happen to pick up a copy, you can actually play a game with us virtually. Again, we'll have a link to that in the description below once it goes up. It'll probably be a couple days after this review is initially released. Or you can watch the How to Play video for the full details on Tiny Towns instructions. Let us know in the comments also what your opinion are. Have you played it? Do you like it? What do you think about that one card, which we're going to have to put on the screen since we can't think of the exact name of it, or any other part of the strategy of Tiny Towns? Let us know right down below.
Until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
This has been Roll for Crit.
Hey, go ahead, like and subscribe, and support our Patreon for even more board game content.
Support us now to hear the audio expansion, where you can hear all the other nerdy things we've been up to.